And welcome back, everybody, to the OHIO podcast, your home for all things Buckeye Nation and beyond. I am the Wild Man, Chris Wilds, and I am joined by the man who bleeds scarlet and gray, maybe as deep as Woody Hayes himself. That's right, Buckeye Boggs. Eric, how's it going today, man?
Well, it's going good, brother. Thank you for
It,
that compliment, man.
absolutely. Well earned, well deserved. And I'll tell you guys, we got a great topic today because we don't like to bring things political onto the show, Eric, but today we got to because it crossed into the world of sports. Today we got news that President Trump signed an executive order this morning aiming to stabilize the mess that is NIL and college sports. You know, Congress had started going through with something called the SCORE Act. Um, Two major developments in the same week, but kind of different approaches a little bit. So let's start here, and that is what are some of the differences? So, Eric, one of the big things is one of the bombshells is it flat out prohibits third party pay to play. That no longer exists. Now, that attacks indirectly. You may still receive NIL, but it is legitimate, fair market value compensation, and you must perform a service such as an endorsement. Now, it sounds like it's a fine line. It sounds like this is kind of what the NCAA was trying to do. But this also is meant to have national effect and supersede any state laws from places like Tennessee and Michigan who were saying, ignore them. So, do you think this puts a stop to kind of some of the sketchier collectives that were still doing the under the table payoffs over the last couple of years? Or do you kind of feel like this is just window dressing? What do you think?
I don't know that it puts a stop to it, but it definitely brings up a hesitation. Um, what'll put a stop to it is if someone gets caught and they get punished for it significantly.
Absolutely. And I think now you're looking at not only a NCAA punishment, but now if you have a law in place, you could conceivably be looking at a civil or criminal punishment from government as well.
Right.
And I think that's a big thing. Now, shifting gears a little bit, another part of this is it addresses athletes' status. You and I and several others have talked about in the past, Eric, the idea that we are very close to these guys becoming employees, becoming unionized. Trump's order directs the Secretary of Labor and the National Labor Relations Board to weigh in and make that determination. Are they going to be athletes? Are they going to be employees? They cannot be. Are they going to be students or are they going to be employees? They cannot be both. To be classified one way or the other.
Now that I have a question about because
And
when I was in college, Chris,
mhm,
I know you remember this too. Students could work jobs
for the
for the
university,
university.
in fact, I did. I worked in public safety.
I thought
I
so.
worked in admissions and registration. Worked in faculty services. I was all over the place. Um, the aim of this is, make no mistake, and Trump makes no mistake about this in this either. The aim is to have them classified as students. They are not going to be recognized as employees. That means they could not have full on contracts and they cannot have unionization if they are not recognized as full on employees. What kind of precedent does that set? And do you think it opens the doors to, do you think they're going to have to make players employees and give them contracts? Do you think the that's the stance that the Labor Relations Board is going to take, or do you think they're going to leave them as student athletes and somehow find a way to push this back under the stipend rule with their payments?
I
Because that's going to determine their amateur.
Right, because what my answer to that question is with a question. What's stopping if they become employees? And they unionize? What's stopping high school athletes from doing the same thing? You're setting a precedent.
You are, but there is one thing that can stop them in, I believe every state, but definitely in most states, and that is that a minor under the age of 18 may not enter into a legal binding contract.
Well, a lot of these college students are 17, some of them.
Correct.
Um, yeah, I understand there's a little bit of an age difference there, but you're still playing for a educational institution. It is not professionalism. It is not the minor leagues. It is not AAA baseball,
Correct.
AA, single A baseball. It is not the UFL. It is not the NFL Europe. It is not the Canadian Football League. It is college sports. I look at this no different than college baseball compared to the minor leagues in Major League Baseball, or college basketball compared to the summer league or the G
The G
League
League. Yeah.
in the um, NBA. To to try and establish football in a different criteria than you do the other athletic sports in collegiate athletics, you are setting yourself up for a major lawsuit with Title IX.
Hmm.
The athletic directors understand this. They know this. It's one of the reasons why I think they have fought against unionization and making these kids employees, because you are opening a Pandora's box to 30, however many other varsity sports your favorite university has. Of course, we know Ohio State has 36 varsity sports.
Right.
So it behooves the educational institutions to keep the main thing, which has been, should be, and forever should be education. To call these guys not student athletes, and we've been doing that now for over a decade.
Hmm.
We still call them student athletes tongue in cheek, but they're
Yeah.
not. Okay, we understand that. I think we need to kind of pull the reins back, turn the horse back around, and get back to where they are still student athletes. Now, can it look different than it did 10, 15 years ago? It already does, and yes, it should. And I agree with you. I think NIL should be used like NIL should be used. And having those guardrails in place are important. I just don't know how legally they're going to be able to defend a said company from giving said amount to said player for whatever they deem that value of that player's worth for doing that particular job. And I know that they could try to set some kind of legal precedence to stop that, but we still live in a free market society that says if I think you signing me one autograph is worth $10 million, then who's to say that I don't value it for that?
And I think the important thing here is, and like I said, this is something the NCAA tried to do as well. I think it's getting support through the actions of this executive order. Is it is going to set a scale. In essence, it is setting a cap. If you look at the SCORE Act, if you look at President Trump's executive order, the legislation, if that goes through, is going to be more long term. It's going to be more long standing.
Understood.
This is actually something that's kind of band aiding if the SCORE Act takes effect, and many of the parts of this mirror one another. One of those parts that mirror in both is the hard salary cap or on revenue sharing,
But let me ask you a question, Chris.
where it caps at 20.5 million for every
How
university.
are caps created?
Well, it's typically based upon, and I don't know how the NCAA created theirs. If you look at baseball, a lot of time it's, let's call it what it is. The big market teams are the ones that push the caps.
Well, right, but caps
And
are created
it's
through
supposed to be based on an average,
caps are caps are agreed upon through negotiations between.
but these guys can't negotiate if they're
Exactly. That's what
right.
I'm saying. So trying to place legality on a cap is going to be tried in court. Someone's going to. I'm telling you right now, there are lawyers lined up to fight this already, man. They are salivating at the mouth because they think this is a easy win for them. If you don't have a players union to negotiate a cap with that you all agree to, then you have legal
But
precedence to fight it.
In essence, Eric, since the cap is being established by the schools, they don't. I mean, the schools as a whole would be the ones who I would think need to negotiate the cap.
Sure, but what's stopping a player getting NIL from a
Well,
company
NIL
that
is separate from this cap. This is the revenue sharing cap.
right, I get that and I understand that. But do you understand where I'm coming from with
I
this?
do.
There's no just because you say this is now legal and this is binding and you can share the 20.5 million amongst your athletes between
Mhm.
all your different sports and you can determine that, great, fine, fantastic. But there's nothing stopping a player from getting pay to play from a company that wants to give them whatever they want.
Well, and
So
that's where. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
the only way that that is prohibited is if it is negotiated through and the way I understand it is negotiated through a players union type of rep situation. And right now, all of these players are basically individual contractors. Essentially, is what they are.
But there's no contracts.
Exactly. They're
And here's the thing with that. I believe that what's going to happen with the NIL, and this is the way it's going to be approached, is the NCAA is just going to follow the suit of what the president has started with this,
oh yeah, they're gonna
and
they've been begging for this,
what
Chris.
they're going to do is say, okay, if you do not adhere to these policies, you're going to be ruled ineligible.
But what is the legal? Do you see where I'm getting at? There is no legal precedence that they can then
But
go
Eric,
off
there's
of.
never been legal precedence with any of the rules that's set by the NCAA,
One could argue that. One could argue that the NCAA is an illegal institution in
except that
itself.
it's been through antitrust hearings and was not found guilty of being a, you know, I mean, there are parts of it that have been taken apart and dismantled a little bit, but as a whole, the whole system has not been ruled illegal.
Correct, because you still they've hid behind the amateurism model for so long that has
And
been
that's why I think they're trying to push that.
which has been found to be a farce essentially.
Correct.
And so now you again you're trying to put the genie back in the bottle and it's gonna be ugly, it's gonna be messy. I don't have to hear TG and Sean's interview of Doug Maurice on the Buckeye Lounge a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to watch the whole thing yet. So
Very, I highly recommend it to everybody. In fact, when you're done watching this, immediately go watch that interview. It's fantastic. I I really respect Doug Maurice's takes and his stance on things. I think he's a brilliant writer, probably one of the best writers that was ever on the beat. Fantastic at podcasting. Kings of the North is a must watch. Um, but him and Bill
yeah,
do a great job. I like what you had to say. There are rules and regulations in every sport, and there needs to be in college football as well. I 100% agree with that. He also said he believes we're going to get there, but getting there is going to hurt. It's going to be painful. It's going to be messy and ugly at times. And this is what I think he was alluding to. They're going to make a ruling. The ruling is then going to be fought in court. Everything that the NCAA is going to try to do is going to be fought in court, which is not a bad thing because then you have legal precedence for things. But and I will say this: I commend the government for trying to do something
Mhm.
here to try and help save the sport that we love. College football to me is sacred. It's special. It's unique. It's different than any other sport that's out there. It's still, even though the purity of it has kind of been tainted somewhat through NIL and transfer portal and things compared to what it was, it's still to me the most purest sport in sport. And I think it's worth trying to save in some level.
So you talked about the government a little bit. You've mentioned Title IX. Here's a part of this order that becomes a bit. I think it makes athletic directors nervous. I think it makes university presidents nervous. I think it makes a lot of people nervous, and that is this: there's a little clause in this executive order about federal funding. It implies that schools who do not comply with these new standards, schools that fail to keep their athletes to the regulation, will lose their federal funding grants, including Title IX support.
Hmm,
So, what kind of leverage does that give the federal government here?
quite a bit.
And is it fair or is it an overreach, in your opinion?
No, I think it's fair. Um, we saw, and again, we strive, and we actually are very proud of the fact that we keep politics out of off the show for the most part.
Mhm,
And I'm not taking a stance either way, one or the other here. But we saw on campuses here recently where campuses were allowing certain individuals to protest on campus that got ugly and in some cases violent. And the government did the same thing.
mhm.
Um, we will withhold funding from your institution if you continue to allow such behavior. Um, it's a form of being daddy. It's a form of being big daddy. Whether you agree with that or you disagree with that is beside the point. It it set a precedent then, and it is now being applied similarly. It sounds like to this particular case. If you don't adhere to what we want you to do, we're going to hit you where it hurts. And if you ask any university president what hurts the most, it's the loss of funds.
Mhm.
Without it, you can't run it. So, yeah, I think that every former player we've ever had on the show has always said they believe that the players deserve a little more. But every single one recently has also said, I don't
Need
know
to
if
get the
we're
break.
doing these kids a service by making them multimillionaires either.
Yeah. So, two more quick takes because I don't want this to run too long on us, Eric. But um, one more big angle, one more big thing that's in this. Trump's executive order talks about protecting women's sports, elite sports, and preserving scholarships and roster spots. Let's be real for a second, though. If NIL and potential employment status start driving decisions, I feel like the non revenue sports have to go. They're going to be the first ones on the chopping blocks.
Not necessarily.
And I was just going to ask, do you think that this order can save these programs by arranging kind of the structure of how the payouts are made?
Yes, I do. Because again, if NIL is being used properly in accordance to, and like I said, I think there's some legal definition here that needs to be ironed out between people much smarter than myself inside a courtroom. But if NIL is used the way NIL was intended to be used from the beginning, as opposed to a recruiting tool and a pay to play, then that that goes back to the haves and the have-nots, which sorry, that's the way it's always been. It's the way it's always gonna be. I'll give you a real life example. The same job I worked in Little Knox County, Ohio, that I work here in the outskirts of Columbus in Delaware County, Ohio, makes me makes me about a third more money here now than it did then because of where I'm at. Your NIL opportunities are not all going to be created equally. That's just reality. That is life, right?
Mhm.
And it might drive decisions for some of these kids. It's one aspect of a decision that needs to be made, and I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that, as long as it is earned NIL based off of who you are, your name, your image, and your likeness. And that number, whatever that number is, it can grow based off of how well you do. But it should never be a kid out of high school who's not proven one thing on the field, whose name, image, and likeness hasn't done diddly squat in college football, make $5 million simply because you're considered a 5-star recruit. That is not what NIL was intended for. That's what needs to change.
Yeah, and you talk about the 5-star. These recruiting agencies are a big part of the problem,
They
putting
are
NIL valuations on these kids.
100%. And
Um,
can I go back and answer your
yeah,
first
please.
question now? So you asked me about saving the other sports. That 20.5 million can be however you want it to be amongst your athletic department. There's no regulations on that. So if you want 18 million of that to go to the football program and 2.5 million to the basketball program or whatever, so be it. That does it. It almost should be dispersed on who brings the athletic department the most money
Mhm.
in all reality, which means it's going to be football. But what it does do, Chris, is it says, hey, the value of a scholarship to play a sport, an Olympic sport. What's the value of that, right? And what money we make from football can be fed into these programs to make sure that they continue, right? It's not just, hey, we're making money hand over fist and we're going to give it right back to the players here, right? I think the football players need to understand, just like in real life, just because you quote unquote make all the money doesn't mean that what everybody else is doing is devalued in some degree. Just like when you go to a business, right?
Right.
Or let's take your work job for instance, Chris. You work for the school system.
Mhm.
The superintendent probably makes the most money. Now,
And he should.
I don't know the particular school you work for, but I know the school I went to, and I'll just be doggone honest with you. I knew a lot more teachers who worked their butts off harder than that superintendent did. I'm just being honest with you.
No, no, I know where you're coming from.
So at the end of the day, when you compare football to the other sports, right? What the rowing team or the pistol team is achieving shouldn't be devalued simply because they don't have an 105,000 seat stadium and millions of people watching them all over the country, right?
Right.
And so that argument, that's where your Title IX argument comes into account here. And I think the football players need to understand that look, what we're doing is important and we need to receive more because we're the value of that. But just because you bring in money because of a massive television contract doesn't mean you get it all.
Right. Yeah. So, and that's the majority of the main points of the executive order and the SCORE Act. There are other components of this, which I'll probably do an article to deep dive on a little bit more so that people can read up the whole thing. But that's the main components. Funny thing about this is this picked up a lot of steam, this executive order, after Donald Trump had a sit down with Nick Saban.
Yeah, imagine that.
So you got to wonder, did the GOAT maybe nudge this whole thing into action a little bit? And if so, is Saban's weighing in on this policy now? Should that have us all worried or grateful?
I'm not worried about it. What do you think he's going to come back and coach again?
No, I'm just saying from a standpoint of is there an alternative motive? Is there maybe it's getting back into coaching, maybe it's
No,
I think that
no.
honestly for me, I'm very grateful if that's what happened. If that's what it took to get things to put guide rails on this thing. I'm very happy about that. He spoke out for years since NIL went legal about it. And of course, at the time, I think we all agree he was speaking out primarily because his competitive advantage was gone.
Right.
But I think at this point, as he's moved on to the announce booth, I feel like he's actually trying to help for the the general good of
Yeah,
college
of the
football.
sport. Yeah. No, I 100%. I think Nick Saban loves college football.
Yeah,
Obviously it does. College football treated him very well, and he was very successful. And whether you believe the rumors or not about Bagman and stuff like that, I think Nick Saban at the end of the day wants to give back to the sport that gave him so much. That's what I believe. Whether you like him or not, it's
yeah. Whether
kind
you
of
like him or not, I
irrelevant.
think you have to respect him because
Yeah, I think it's
Eric,
irrelevant
I don't think there's an argument he is the greatest coach in college history.
in
Uh,
our
n-
lifetime.
yeah, at least
I
in our
mean,
lifetime.
I I would love to have seen what he would have done against Woody Hayes and some
Even
of
go
the
back to his own university, Bear Bryant.
Bear Bryant, yeah, Newt Rockney, you know,
Yeah.
Paul
Last question.
Paul Brown.
Yeah. Is the SCORE Act or Trump's executive order, either one, is this the real fix that college football needs, or are we just putting duct tape on a dam that's already leaking?
It's not duct tape. It's not duct tape.
Quickcrete?
Maybe. Is it gonna be the final fix? No, it's not. It's a step in the direction. It's a step in the right direction. Um, it'll be very, and I'll tell you, at the end of the day, it's gonna come down to the Big Ten and the SEC just taking control of it.
I
At
agree.
the, I mean, we're still heading in that direction, but this is kind of a detour. I think, we're we instead of driving off the cliff to get to the bottom of the hill, okay, we're actually going to try to stay on the road here a little bit. Uh, and so hats off to some smart people in the room who are trying. At least they're trying.
Yeah. All right, guys. There you have it, Buckeye Nation. The future of college sports still up in the air, but we have the people in Washington, the power players, starting to get a little bit involved. Whether you're for the federal guardrails or worried about overreach, one thing's for sure. As Eric just said, we ain't seen the last of this. We ain't heard the last of this. Guys, be sure to follow us on X, Facebook, Instagram. Make sure you hit subscribe, like, make sure you ring that bell so you know when we drop new content like this. And guys, if you aren't already, make sure you sign up to become an official member. It's only $3.99 a month. All kinds of great items, including a free t-shirt after your first renewal. You get free shipping from our online store, behind the wall content. And Eric, coming very, 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 very soon, the Big Ten preview guide.
It's not the Big Ten preview
It's the
guide.
Ohio State preview guide. I'm sorry.
There you go.
The Ohio State preview guide,
I
where
don't
we
care about
preview
the
all the
rest of
teams in
the
the
Big
Big Ten
Ten.
that suck that aren't named Ohio State
We preview all the teams in the Big Ten Ohio State plays.
and beats.
Hopefully.
They will. For Buckeye Boggs, I'm the Wild Man saying good night, God bless, and go Bucks.
Go Bucks.